The 1971 Minnesota Vikings won 11 regular season games and lost only 3 games with the second worst passing offense in the NFL. In the offseason, they traded for superstar quarterback Fran Tarkenton, yet only finished with a .500 record in 1972, despite being a 5-2 favorite to win the National Football Conference. Who and or what are the reasons for the Vikings' failure to meet those expectations of success? I'll explain in detail. After watching this video, let me know in the comments what you think is the biggest reason for the Vikings' disheartened 1972 season. All footage shown is from the 1972 season unless otherwise noted. In the 1971 NFL Divisional Playoff game at home against Dallas, the Vikings started Bob Lee, who had only started 6 regular season games in 3 years. He threw 2 interceptions with only 86 passing yards and a dismal 21.4 passer rating. Head coach Bud Grant named Lee the starter after Friday's practice, just before Saturday's game. Gary Cuazzo replaced Lee and threw 2 more costly interceptions in a 20-12 loss on Christmas Day. The Vikings had a huge quarterback problem. Gary Cuazzo started 8 games, while 1969 17th round draft pick Bob Lee started 4 games, and 11-year veteran Norm Snead started 2 games. Combined, they only threw 9 touchdown passes against 18 interceptions. This problem was seemingly solved when the Vikings reacquired Fran Tarkenton from the Giants via trade on January 27, 1972. In 5 seasons in New York, Tarkenton made 4 straight Pro Bowl teams and finished in 3rd place of the 1970 NFL MVP vote. In 1972, Tarkenton mainly relied on a short passing game to running backs and tight ends. His 56.9 completion percentage ranked 3rd best in the NFL, as did his passer rating and passing yards. The Vikings drafted Colgate running back Ed Marinaro in the 1972 second round. He finished 2nd in the 1971 Heisman Trophy vote. He only caught 23 passes in 3 collegiate seasons, but he caught 28 as an NFL rookie. Wide receiver Gene Washington had been a huge weapon, as he made the NFC Pro Bowl teams in 1968 and 1969, but his 18 catches for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns demonstrated that he was nearing the end of the line. In 1973, he was traded to the Broncos for wide receiver Rod Sherman and a draft pick. Wide receiver John Gilliam became a Viking in 1972. He, along with Cardinals' 1973 second and fourth round draft picks, were shipped for Vikings quarterback Gary Cuozzo. Gilliam became a star in Minnesota as he made the NFC Pro Bowl team in each of his 4 seasons there. In 1972, he led the NFL with a 22 yards per catch, and his 1,035 receiving yards was the second highest mark. His 47 receptions led the Vikings. The Vikings really needed Gilliam's deep threat in order to offset their overall extremely short passing game. Even with Gilliam, the Vikings' 12.5 yards per catch was the 9th lowest in the NFL. In John Henderson's last season of his 8-year career, he caught 10 passes for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, in Week 13 at home against Green Bay, his dropped pass of a sure touchdown aided in a 16-point loss, as did Bill Brown's fumble that linebacker Fred Carr scooped up and scampered 20 yards. The Packers scored a touchdown on the ensuing drive. Grady Alderman played left tackle, made 6 Pro Bowl teams, and second-team All-Pro twice, but he was age 34 in 1972 and only played 2 more years. Left guard Ed White was 25, and 1972 was the second year in which he started every game. He hadn't made any Pro Bowl teams as of yet, but he'd make 4 in the future. Center Mick Tingelhoff was age 32, and he had made 154 consecutive starts through the 1972 season and would finish his career with an amazing 240. While he made the Pro Bowl team and All-Pro designation each year from 1964 through 1969, he didn't attain either thereafter. Right guard Milt Sunday was age 30 and playing in his last season as a full-time starter. He was a 20th round draft pick in 1964 out of the University of Minnesota. Right tackle Ron Yeri was in the prime of his career at age 26. He made the NFC Pro Bowl team and All-Pro designation each year from 1971 through 1977. Overall, the offensive line was old, with 3 of the 5 linemen being 30-plus years old, and they didn't consistently open a lot of big holes for ball carriers. The Vikings' 3.7 yards per carry was well below the NFL average of 4.1. Old plow horses Bill Brown and Dave Osborne were the team's second and third leading rushers with very modest numbers. Oscar Reed was the team's leading rusher with 639 yards, only the 26th best in the league. Number 26, Clint Jones, was in his 6th and final season as a Viking. He chipped in with 164 yards and a couple of rushing touchdowns. I think the lack of a respectable running game is a key factor in the team's 500 record. They didn't have a breakaway running back, and they put themselves into a lot of obvious passing downs. They threw the ball the 3rd most times in the NFL. Vikings defensive front four was nicknamed the Purple People Eaters. They gave up the fewest points in the league each year from 1969 through 1971. However, 1972 was different, as they surrendered the 11th most points despite adding second-round draft pick, middle linebacker Jeff Seaman from Stanford. He was the 10th overall selection and was taken with New England's draft pick as compensation for their signing of free agent quarterback Joe Kapp. Another reason for the Vikings' 500 record is that they couldn't stop superstar running backs. In Week 5, although they won by 3 points on a last-second touchdown pass, Floyd Little ran for 100 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. Former Syracuse backfield mate Larry Zonka averaged 6.6 yards per carry in the Dolphins' Week 3 win, and the Redskins' Larry Brown rushed for 105 yards in another Vikings loss. In Week 11 at Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium, the Vikings lost by 13 points, and a big reason was Franco Harris's 128 rushing yards. In Week 13 at home, the Vikings lost to the Packers by 16 points. They were overrun by the punishing running back combination of John Brockington and MacArthur Lane, who had 114 and 99 rushing yards respectively. Even though the Vikings beat the Rams 45-41 in Week 10, Willie Ellison ran for 104 yards. Also, little-known Bears running back Jim Harrison rambled for 103 yards in another Vikings loss. Purple People Eaters were getting long in the tooth. Although Alan Page was in his prime at age 27, Carl Eller was 30, Gary Larson was 32, and Jim Marshall was 35. Also, outside linebackers Wally Hilgenberg was 30 years old and Roy Winston was 32 years old. In 1969, the Vikings defense gave up a league-low 3.2 yards per carry. In 1970, they were the fifth best rushing defense at 3.4 yards per carry. In 1971, their 3.6 yards per carry allowed was eighth best, and in 1972, their 4.4 yards per carry allowed was only 20th best of the 26 teams. This is another glaring reason for their .500 record. They had big trouble stopping the run. Alan Page was in his prime at age 27, but he lost 35 pounds from his 280-pound rookie playing weight in order to gain more quickness. While that's great in most defensive tackle duties, it isn't always that great when teams run right at you with double-team blocking from a guard and center who sizably outweigh you. Alan Page only had 6 sacks, while the starting defensive line tallied a total of 16. Defensive end Carl Eller had 7 sacks to lead the team, defensive tackle Gary Larson chipped in with 3, and defensive end Jim Marshall was amazingly shut out. He didn't have any sacks in 1972. Only 2 teams had less than the Vikings' 21 sacks. Another key reason for the Vikings' .500 record. Benchwarmer Bob Lurtzen was roughing the passer penalty, and Bob Greasy, on an incompleted third down pass, kept a Dolphins drive alive with about 2 minutes remaining in Week 3. The Dolphins scored a touchdown and won 16-14. Another reason for the Vikings' .500 record. There were reasons to cheer the Vikings in 1972, however. The defense intercepted 26 passes, which was the second most in the NFL. They also caused 40 turnovers, which was the fourth most in the league. However, the Vikings offense turned the ball over 8 more times. Yet another reason for their .500 record. On this Week 4 play, Cardinals wide receiver Bobby Moore caught a touchdown pass in the right corner of the end zone near the third base dugout. Just 8 years later, he'd catch a touchdown pass for the Vikings in that same area that propelled them to the playoffs. On this occasion, he was named Ahmad Rashad. With 5 seconds remaining in Week 9 against the Lions at Minnesota, and the score 16-14, Lions kicker Earl Mann attempted a 33-yard field goal, but it was blocked by Bobby Bryant. Number 23, Jeff Wright, recovered the ball, and the Vikings had won their 10th in a row against the Lions. The Vikings' kicking chores were manned by Fred Cox, and although he was 21 of 23 in the field goal department, he became another reason for the Vikings' 500 record when in Week 4 his 26-yard attempt hit an upright. The Vikings lost by 2 points. Heroes had the Vikings pegged at 5-2 odds to go to the Super Bowl for the 1972 season, but instead, their play left their fans with other thoughts of consolation. Please click the like button, add a comment, and as always,